Say hello, Stuffer. I love you so much. She's such a good cat. You're so pretty. Look at your face. Look at your little face. You're so cute. Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel Plant Paws. My name is Megan. If you're new here, we hang out and talk about all things cats and plants. So welcome, I'm glad you're here. Today we're doing another episode of Purrfect Plant Showcase. I'm really excited about this one because it is one of my favorites in my collection. And I actually had one of you guys comment in my last Purrfect Plant Showcase video about this plant. So I thought it was perfect to do this plant because I love it so much, but also I just want to talk about it with you guys and show it off a little bit. And if you guys don't already have this plant in your collection, you'll probably want one by the end of this video. Alright you guys, this week's Purrfect Plant Showcase highlighted plant is going to be the Syngonium Chiapense. Stella's trying to take my caprese. Look at her. Would you just look at that? Like, ugh, those leaves they're just so pretty and they're so silky. Like, I love it so much. Like, let me just get you guys a close up here. So pretty. Like I said in my plant tour, these leaves are pretty much like picture perfect. When I first got her, it was only I think 2 or 3 leaves. And so it's definitely been growing. It's been an easy grower for me, super low maintenance. And then it's working on another leaf, if you can see that right there. Okay, let's get on with the origin of this plant. The Syngonium Chiapense is a tropical plant and its natural habitat is the moist forest, and it originated from southern Mexico. Some characteristics to know about the Syngonium Chiapense is that it is an epiphytic plant, so it is a climber. It loves to climb. So in household conditions, if you're able to provide it with something to climb, as far as like a moss pole, a trellis, a choir pole, anything like that, that's when it's going to be its most happiest, and then you're going to be able to see the leaves mature and get bigger faster that way. This plant is known to be pretty hardy, low maintenance, easy to grow, and it can withstand a little bit of neglect. So it's definitely a great plant to have as one of your starters if you're newer to plant care. This one definitely is pretty easygoing. And as you can see, as far as the physical characteristics of the leaves themselves, they're a very like matte type of leaf, I would say. And they're typically known to be kind of like rubbery or latexy, especially when they mature. When I was doing research on this plant, that's probably the word that I saw the most describing the leaves of this plant was the word rubbery. But they definitely have a very matte texture to me. Like, they don't reflect light off of them like other leaves do, which I think is really cool. I really like that about this one. Alright you guys, now moving into care for the Syngonium Chiapense. Starting off with light, this plant does prefer bright indirect light like most plants. But what's really cool about this one is that it can very well tolerate low to medium light. In its natural habitat, this plant grows on the floor of the forest, which is typically darker. And it's known that this plant will climb other plants or trees to get up to the forest canopy to reach brighter light. So this plant is definitely flexible when it comes to lighting requirements and what you can provide it. But mine personally, I have on my plant shelf that gets a decent amount of light right above it. So this one probably gets more light than it needs. From what I've read online, it sounds like a lot of people have theirs in like medium light and they still do really good and produce leaves nonstop. So I think from whatever array of light from medium to bright indirect, it's going to be pretty happy. But obviously don't put it in direct sunlight because much like other plants, you can scorch the leaves. So try to avoid that. And as for watering the Chiapense, like I said earlier, it's a pretty hardy plant, so it can handle some infrequent watering and the occasional drying out. It is recommended to let at least the top inch of the soil dry out between waterings. For mine personally, I let mine dry out most of the way. So I actually just watered this one I think a day or two ago, so it's pretty moist and happy right now. Anyway, like I said, I let this one almost completely dry out before I watered again, but as you can see, it's not in the biggest pot because it doesn't have a huge root system, or at least it didn't when I potted it in here, but now it's going kind of crazy. Look at those roots, they're starting to grow out. Just don't let it dry out obviously too much because then that can cause problems, but it can handle a little bit of neglect like I said. So with fertilizer for the Syngonium Chiapense, I read a few different things, so I don't really think there's like a cut and dry schedule for fertilizing, but I read that you can either fertilize weekly with like a smaller dose, like a watered down dose of fertilizer, or if you don't want to do it that often, do it at least twice a month. It's typically recommended not to fertilize during like winter and the colder seasons because they're typically not growing as much. But if you're able to provide it with the conditions to where it is still growing, it's okay to fertilize, but maybe just don't fertilize too much, obviously. Me personally, I fertilize most of my plants like every other watering. So I use a slow release fertilizer called Osmocote in a majority of my plants, and then I fertilize like every other watering, which is usually around like every 2 weeks during the summertime because they get very thirsty. So that's what I do with mine, but yeah, just make sure with yours, just fertilize it maybe twice a month during the growing seasons. All right, and then for soil, this is an aeroid. So like I've said, aeroid mix is key for this one. You want to make sure that the soil mix is very well draining. So add things like perlite, pumice, bark, cocoa chips, all that kind of stuff, because you want it to not be sitting in any water. So it needs to be very well draining and very chunky. Mine's kind of hard to see because the roots are a little bit crazy. Like they're starting to take over in here. But if you guys could see the mix, I've got quite a bit of additives in there. Like I said, it's hard to see, but I've got cocoa chips in mine as well as pumice and perlite. So it seems pretty happy in here. I've had good luck with it so far. So yeah, chunky mix. And then for humidity for the Syngonium Chiapense, it does prefer humidity between 40 to 60%, but it's not very picky about it. It can definitely live in lower humidity just fine. But like with most plants, obviously the higher the humidity you can provide it, the more it'll thrive. And then for temperature, it does prefer a temperature of between 59 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So typically the common household temperature is just fine, but also avoid cold drafts in temperatures. So if you have it like next to a door or a window that's constantly opening and closing, it might not like it there. And for common issues with the Syngonium Chiapense, I honestly could not find a whole lot about like specific issues with this. So just the basics, you know, overwatering and then pests. So overwatering due to too much watering or too dense of soil, or the common pests, so mealybugs, thrips, spider mites, anything like that. They can still get those, although they are really hardy plants. So just keep that in mind. But I have not had any issues with this plant with any of that so far. And then for toxicity, the Syngonium Chiapense is known to be toxic to both humans and animals when ingested. And it is known to also cause some skin irritation when handling like fresh cut propagations or anything like that. So maybe just wear gloves, keep that in mind when cutting this plant or trimming or anything like that. Which brings me to propagating. This plant is known to be pretty easy to propagate. I've not done it myself yet because I haven't had this plant super long. I'm still waiting for it to get more established. But I've heard that all you need to do is take a fresh cutting just below the node and you can stick it in water, sphagnum moss, really any substrate of your choice. And I've heard that they're pretty easy to root up. So if you've propagated this plant before, let me know what you use and how it went, because I'd be curious to know if it is actually as easy as they say. And that is it for the care for the Syngonium Chiapense. It's pretty easygoing and laid back, so I very much recommend getting your hands on one of these if you don't have one already. But I wanted to end this video with a fun fact that I didn't know. The Syngonium Chiapense actually can produce fruit in the wild. Obviously not typically in like household conditions. It produces inflorescences that are yellow to whitish in color. I'll put a picture so you can see what it looks like. That then, to my understanding, if they're fertilized, can turn into fruit If I'm wrong, correct me, because there wasn't a whole lot of information that I found about this whole process. But the fruit that it produces contains 50 to 100 seeds in the piece of fruit themselves, and is known to get spread around mostly by birds. And I just thought that was really cool because that's essentially how this plant can travel and spread its seed, which is cool because it's a beautiful plant. I would love to see it in its natural habitat. Maybe someday. Alright, you guys, that is all I have for you for this week's Purrfect Plant Showcase. I hope you enjoyed the video all about Syngonium Chiapense. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit like below, and don't forget to subscribe if you like all things cats and plants. Leave a comment below if you have one of these in your home already. I would love to hear about your experience growing this plant in your home. I love getting comments from you guys, so keep them coming. I really appreciate the engagement and the support from all you guys so far. It really just makes my day to read those comments. You guys are so freaking sweet, and it just keeps me going. So thank you for that. I just wanted to throw some appreciation your guys' way because I see it and it just brings a smile to my face every time. So thank you. If you guys have any recommendations or plants that you would like to see highlighted in next week's Purrfect Plant Showcase, let me know. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!